In this video, we're going to focus on creating a progress bar for every bar item here. As you can see here, we have all these items showing the completion of each, and of course for every week. So let's start to explore how to do this. So the first thing what we need to have is our border template, which you can find here on chartjs3.com getting started. Once you're on here, copy this chunk of code and you're good to go. If you want to get the code or the source code immediately, check out my Patreon page. And of course, got a question, put it on Discord. All these items you can find in the description box. All the links are in the description box. So what I'm going to do now is, let's start to work with the very basics. The first thing is I need to create a horizontal bar. So I'm going to say here in the options, index axis, and I'm going to say here the Y. So we're going to swap the X with the Y. There we are. So once we did this, what I need to do next is basically change the ticks here. So let's start to play around with our scales, specifically the X scale that we're going to adjust, because the Y scale is basically a category axis with every item in here. So what I want to do here is, I want to put in here eventually week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To do that, I'm going to say here, we're going to say max 5 items. So what I'm going to use here is a cosmetic trick here. So we have from 0 to 5, but now I want to make sure our ticks are restricted to 5 ticks only, or 6 ticks including the 0. So what I'm going to say here, ticks, and within the ticks object, we're going to say here max, the maximum tick limit. Ticks limit will be equal to 6. Save, refresh, there we are. And then what I want to do is just to enforce it, the step size will be 1. I do not want anything else. I don't want it to make it smaller or larger in step size, but it should be 1. So one of this at a time. So once we have this ready, we can continue on with the text here. So I want here week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. So to do this, I'm going to use another cosmetic trick. I'm going to say here callback. And the callback here, I'm going to say here value. We're going to get the value, the index, and the ticks. Function our expression because it's a callback functionality. And then we're going to say a constant, or let's do a console log first. Console log, and then I'm going to say here, for example, the value. What will happen is I'll just get here these values from 0 to 5. What I want to do is I want to say here week 1, 2, 3, and 4. Or etc, etc. So what I'm going to say here is, well, what we can do here is return, and I'm going to say here for the week, I'll make it very simple. I'll make here template literals. We say W, $sign, and then we're going to say here we're going to add the value. If I do this, you can see here week 1 all the way to 5, but in this case we have week 0. So what I want to do here, then here value plus 1, so we should have value of week 1. There we are. Of course, week 6 should not be in here. This has no value for us. We only want to show everything from this week to the 5th week. So I'm going to remove that, and to do that, I'm going to use here, I guess, a if statement, and then I'm going to say here, what we can do here is the following. I guess we can just say here if. What we can do here, if the there we are. What I need to do here first, I need to create a length, so that's my bad. So what I'm going to say here, constant length, and we're going to grab here the ticks dot length minus 1, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe we have to even do minus 2, but I think 1 should be fine. So then I'm going to say if the length is larger than index. In that case, what I want to do here is return. Should we return that one or not return? I think we should do it like that. Oh, alright, there we are. That works already fine. So we have that here, that works. This, what I would like to do is maybe push it more to the right side. So to push that a bit more to the right side, we can say here in the ticks, let's say here align. And we'll align it at the very beginning or start. So we'll start here immediately. There we are. That looks slightly better knowing that this is related to this segment here. So now we have our cosmetic item. Of course, if you see here, this is still not matching, but we'll work on that one. So what we want to do here now is basically we can work on the plugin itself. So say here, let's make sure that this is the options. All right, after the options, comma, plugins, then I'm going to say here our progress bar, like that, copy, constant, and then here id equals this, and then we're going to say here before the dataset draw, before the dataset or data sets draw. So before we draw the dataset, we want to draw these progress bars, which is a background. So that's number one. So that's what we're going to do here. And then, although I do realize that maybe we should just prepare these bars first. So let's do that first. So in here, we have the border width. For this, I'm going to use a trick here for the border width. I'm going to say here the border color will be transparent. So that will give us a nice border. Oh, transparent, comma, comma, hold on. I think we get here the progress bar. And then let's blank that as well. Reference transparent is not defined. Interesting. Border color, oh, of course. This should be a string value. So now I get that. What I want to do is border radius. So let's do that as well, comma, border radius, and we can say border radius of 5 pixels. Save, refresh. So now we have this, but it's very hard to see because these are far too large. I'm going to narrow them down. So to narrow this down, I need to change here the data. So I'm going to put that here. Then what I'm going to do here for the data, I'm going to say here, this is an object, I'm going to say for the X, the data, we want to have it always between this to this. Remember, this is basically cosmetically a text, but this is 0 and this is 1. So that means that 0 to 1 is 100%. It is from 1 to 2, 3 to, and then etc. etc. So we just have that same logic. So if I want to have something that covers from this to here, I'm going to work in a 0 to 1 structure. So let me just show you. We're going to see array. We're going to make a floating bar, 0 to 1. And then what I want to do here, well, let's start to give it some nice names here. Let's say David. And then we say here, Luna. What do we have more? John, and I guess something more. So I have no other names for now. I'll just keep it like that. That's fine. So once we have this here, what I want to do now is making sure that the Y scale, because this is a category access which works on a string value, is related to that. So if I do it like this, save, refresh, and now we have this here. This is exactly from beginning to end, but we have this 5 pixels of border width. If I put this on 0, you will see it will touch it nicely. As you can see here, the border radius works, but it's not working on both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say here, comma, border skipped set on false. By default on a bar chart, this is true. That means that the border at the beginning is being connected to the scale. Now it is completely flat, or now it works. It's both sides are border radius. And then if I do like this, I do notice that we have here no real border radius. So let's increase the border radius to 10 here because the border width. There we are. Now it will look nicer. So we have this here, and that's the first one. So what about Luna? Let's put in Luna here. And then we're going to say here Luna, and make sure that this is identical with whatever you have here. And let's copy this and just make John as well. So we have all of them. And what we want to do here for Luna, we will say 0.5. John will be 0.3. Say, well, let's make this 6. There we are. There we are. Now we have all of these items here. That looks quite nice. So we need a proper background now, which would basically indicate the progress. And of course, you might say, what about if I want it here? Well, let me just show you. Comma, put it in there. And then, of course, remember what I said previously is this is 0 to 1. This is 1 to 2. So the same logic. But then here we say 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, and 2. Save, refresh. There we are. Oh, and then as you can see here, this is not allowed 2.6. How did I manage to do that one? That is of course not allowed. That should be 1.6, of course. My bad. Because we should be, the maximum is 2. Alright, that looks beautiful. Let's make sure the colors are properly. So what I'm going to do is just going to get this blue color. And then there we are. Save, refresh. Alright, so now we've got all of these. I want to have a proper background. And you can see here the tooltip is still not correct. We're going to fix that later on. So don't worry about that. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to scroll down. Work on this progress bar here now. Chart, arcs, and plugin options. Then we're going to say here, object destructuring equals the chart, of course. Then we're going to say here, what do we need here? I will need the CTX. I will need the data, I think so. The scales we probably will be needing as well. X and Y definitely. So there we are. Now we have everything here. So what I want to do next is start to draw the shape, and then after we're going to use some of the logic here, because we have here the border radius. This is basically what we need as well. So what I'm going to do here, ctx.save, to save all variables above, and then we're going to work with it. Let's give it first a color. I'm going to ctx.fillStyle, and the color for the item will be just the gray color that we have, or not really gray. This is the black, but with a very high transparency, 0.2. So that will be the color. Then what I want to do here is create the rounded rectangle that should fit exactly in here where this bar is covering. The 100% must hit from this side all the way to that side. So what we're going to do here, ctx.round rectangle, or round rec, and then in here I'm going to get the x coordinate, the y coordinate, the width, the height, and the border radius. So the border radius, I guess that is probably 10, or, well, we have to see on that one, but what I will do here, for now, I'm just going to grab this border radius here by using the data object. So we're going to say constant, and I'm going to say border radius will be equal to data sets index 0. So if you're wondering, how do I get this? This data here is basically the reference to this here, and then you can go here into the data sets index 0 because we only have one data set, and then I'm going to get here the border radius. That's it. So here, and then border radius. So then what I want to do next is, how do we get the x and y? So for the x and y, oh, before I even continue on, I forgot something else, because this is a shape. I want to indicate that this shape is independent of anything else. So I'm going to say ctx.begin path. So the shape will be drawn and will not bleed over colors to any other item. This is very important to do. So once we have this, now we're going to get the x and y. So for the x, let's see, what do we need? Well, we can probably get x, and then we say here dot get pixel for the value. And this is a built-in functionality. And I'm going to say the value is 0, which is basically the starting point here. So once we did this, we still need to get the y, and because this is the very first one on here, we can basically put in a number, or we can put in the text. In this case, I don't want the text, I just put in a number. That will be easier for me later on, because we will be needing a loop in here, or for each loop, or any kind of loop. So I'm going to say here this and that one. So basically we're going to say we're going to start at x from the left, to basically starting here, basically it goes to the left, start here, and then y will be going down to the first one here. And later on we can fine tune this if this works, yes or no. So for the width, we need to check here the w and the h. So we have the height and the width. For the width, I'm going to use a built-in functionality. And then let me just hide this one first. Or what I can do is I'm just going to say here 100, and the height will be 50. I have no idea how it will look like, but we can just test this first. ctx.fail to create the shape. Save, refresh. There we are. So that's so far what we have. We need to fine tune this and make it much better. So what I'm going to do here is the following. I want to get here the width. So I'm going to say here console log, and I'm going to do here chart.getData set meta index 0, and then what we want to do here is to get the data of one width. So we're going to see here dot data and then index 0 from one data point, and let's save that and refresh. What we will get is the width of one of these bars from this point to that point here. Am I correct? Or basically the width here from this point to here. That is, if I'm not mistaken, that should be the full width. And the height here is the thickness of this bar. However, that sometimes doesn't work very well, so we will only get the width here. So we're going to get the width, and then we're just going to say constant width equals this. Grab that, and I'm going to say here this was the W for the width, and then we have the height we still have to figure out. Alright, as you can see here, I realized that what I'm doing here is probably not practical because we're going to get this item here. Let's see what we can do more. Let's see if I can fine-tune this more. I guess we need to change that a little bit. I guess what we can do here, let me double check. Well, I'll just leave it for now. I have another trick for it. We're going to use that later on. Because what I expected to happen, I was expecting it to be on the height and not on the width. But of course, because this will happen because of the calculation here. So it will stop calculating until it gets the final details, and then it stops, and then it shows it. This is the reason why. So that is only because it is a horizontal bar chart. If it's a vertical bar chart, the width will be shown, but the height will be calculated, which makes sense. So in this case, the height will give us the instant information. So what we can do here is put in the height, save, refresh. And then, of course, this width needs to be properly calculated, or just give it a number that is small enough. There we are. So now you get an instant value. So while you look at this, you can see here the height, but there's something wrong with this height. First of all, we need to go more in the center because it starts at this point going down. So we're going to push it up, but also it calculates the width with the thickness of our transparent bar border width, as you can see here. So that means 5 up, 5 down, and that's why this one looks bigger than the bar here. So don't worry, we're going to fix that as well. So let's do that first. We have the height here, but I think we can do here a new height constant, half height, and I'm going to say yeah, height divided by 2. Nothing fancy, and the reason why I'm doing this here is basically because we'll be needing this half height and the height sometimes. So what I'm going to do here for the height, then I'm going to say here, do we need to push this up? Yes, I need to push it up on the Y value. 50% higher will give us the right thing. There we are. Alright, so now we get that, and I realize that what we can grab is the border width. What we did here for the border radius, I think we can get this as well for the border width. So we have these 5 pixels calculated. If ever you have a different number, it will automatically calculate through the formula. That makes far more sense. So what I need to do here now is I need to trim down this 5 pixels here, 5 pixels there. So what I'm going to do here, I want to say here minus, and then what we can do here probably is plus 5 pixels. There we are, exactly. But now down here needs to be trimmed as well. So what I'm going to do here is on the height, we can probably say minus that, or even minus one more time. So I feel like that should be fixed, and that can be fixed because it is not 5 pixels, it's both sides 5 pixels, 10 pixels. Maybe we just deduct that from here, the border width. Let's do it like that. Alright, then I think maybe we need to just remove this and see if that would solve our issue. No, alright. Hold on, I guess what we can do then is here we'll just multiply this by 2. So it will shorten it twice. There we are. That's it. So now we need to do the same logic. You can see here our border radius is slightly off. So we need to make sure that this is better as well. Anyway, we'll do it later on. So what we're going to do here is this will be moved into here. That will mean that we need to say here plus border width. Alright, now I need to go to the very end. And that is our 100 pixel that we need to solve. So let's see, how do we solve this? The first thing that we can do is we can do this a formula so it will get instantly. So what we can do, what we did here is we know two things. Number one, we know that this is index 0 and this is 1, this point here. So that means that this to this here is basically number 1 minus 0. Let's save that, refresh, there we are. That makes sense, but of course now we need to trim down the 10 pixels. So what we could do here, again, is minus, and then we're going to say here the border width times 2, I guess. That should be fine. There we are. I think that looks nice. So we have this here, but because of the 5 pixels here of the transparency, the border radius, we made it thicker to make it visible. And what I mean was, remember, you can see here, these are just square edges because it doesn't calculate because of the border radius that we have. If I make this black, you will see exactly what I mean. The border here has that benefit. So that will mean that this border radius here of 10 should basically be divided here by whatever it is. Border radius here divided by 2 would make more sense. I think now we have exactly the 5 pixel effect that we wanted. Alright, so now we got that here, we can now start to loop through all of those here. So to do that, we're going to make here a for each loop. So what I'm going to say here, and then I guess this color here will be applied on every background bar or progress bar. So I can just put it in here. No need to for loop this multiple times because the color is identical. The only thing I want is to make sure that every shape we make is a new shape. So then what I'm going to say here, let's do the for each first. So we're going to go from the data labels. So we know that there's 3 items here. So we know that at least we can loop it 3 times here, and then afterwards we're going to loop it from left to right as well. So we're going to say here data.labels. So now we know that how many labels, data labels we have, and then we say dot for each item I want to have for every data or for every label. Get the index as well, and then function arrow expression, and we're going to cut out this, put it in there. Once we did this, I want to say here this should be the I value, or so not even I, this should be I guess we just leave this for here, but I want to move the Y, and the Y is basically here, down, down. That's it. So what I'm going to say here, I want to grab here this index. Let's save that and see if this is correct. Alright, that works. So now I need to do it for the other one, and for that I'm going to use a for loop. And the for loop will be nested within this for each loop, so pay attention. So what I'm going to do here is, we're going to do a for loop. Say let I equals 0. And then what I want to do here is, for every I, we're going to loop through, and what I want is, I'm going to get here from the scales, this, we calculated ticks. And that is basically a function. I will not show you this, but just follow along, and if you want to do a console log for it, you will understand it. I'm going to say here, and then we're going to say here ticks.length. Just calculate how many ticks we have. There's an I++, then 1, 2, oh, that's not what I wanted, sorry. Cut out this. And then once we did that, we moved it in here, and then I have to make sure that this for loop will be nested in there with the data. I think we got that now. Do we have that? But then I want to make sure that this will be adjusted to I. Save, refresh. There we are. And now we've got it here. We're almost done. There's a few things we need to fix here. Tooltip. I don't like the tooltip that you need to be specifically on here, because as it gets smaller, let's say get a 0.1 or like this, 10% only, it is really hard to touch. I don't want that, and I don't like whatever the text is on our tooltip. Doesn't make any sense. So what I'm going to do here is continue on with that. But so far we've done this. I'm going to fix a few things in the tooltip. After the scales here, pay attention what I'm going to do here. Let's remove this comma there, it's useless. Then I'm going to say here, plugins. Don't get confused with these plugins. This is different plugins. This plugins is related to Legend, Tooltips, etc., or anything that we built in specifically because of this item here, but I'm not going deep into that. I'll leave that for now. We're going to say here tooltip, and in the tooltip object I want to do some customization. And what are the customizations? First of all, intersect, set this on false, save, refresh, and now look at this. That's much better. It will trigger it immediately even if I'm on the nearest point, which is quite awesome. Alright, once we did this, the next thing what we want to do is proper text. So I'm going to say here callbacks, and in the callbacks here we're going to say here the label I want to trigger or change, label, not labels. And I'm going to say here the context, comma index, and then there we are. Then what I want to do here is constant total, or sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's do console log, and I'm just going to show you what I need here. I just basically need the context here, save, refresh, open up developer tab. Right now we get all this information, and what I want here is basically the raw data, specifically index x1 and index x0. So 0 and 1, these are the numbers here. This is 1 and 2 because we are here 100%. So what I want to do here is just say 100% complete. Very straightforward. So what I'm going to do here, how do we get that? So we say dot, I think it's raw or parsed, raw dot x index 0. And if I save that, refresh, we should get the numbers. Alright, we're getting the numbers here now. So what I want to do is I want to deduct them one from another. So I say constant total equals 1 minus that. So that makes all sense. So once we get that, then if I say here return this value, return total, save, now we get the value 1, this, etc., etc. As you can see here, very interesting calculations. Doesn't matter at all. So what I want to do now is I want to fine tune this, clean this up, and we'll just say here backtick, because I'm going to use template literals, and then I'm going to say here completed $, this, and I'm going to say here dot to fixed 1 decimal, and then I just say also times 100 pixels over 100%, and we do percentage, save, refresh, 60%, 30%, 10%, etc., etc. So there we are. Now we have them all. Sadly enough, I cannot make the effect here. Probably it's possible, but it's very complicated that I avoid that. What I will do is adding up some more items just to see if this really works. All right, let's get Luna. I'm going to put in here Luna will be number 2 and 2, and then of course another one for number 3 and 4. If we do this, say refresh, you can see here these are now in here. Absolutely phenomenal. There we are.